So we are continuing our Inspired series, and I want to just share with you a story about Marjorie Jackson. Marjorie Jackson was born in Coff Harbour, Australia in 1931. When she was just a small kid, her dad recognized that she was a good runner. She's a pretty good runner. And when she was older, maybe 12, 13 years old, her dad asked one of the track coaches in their town, "Hey, would you coach my daughter?" She didn't really have any say in the matter. She didn't really have this zest for running, but she just did what she was told. Her dad said, "Go and meet the coach, and he's going to train you to run." And that's exactly what happened. And he trained her, and she began to run the 50 yard, the 100 yard, the 200. Well, I say yard. The 50 meter, the 100 meter, and the 200 meter. Those were her events. And soon she began to win. And by the time she was 17, she was winning large championships. She was a very notable person in Australia for her speed as a runner, as a sprinter. And as she began to win, she began to get a little attitude about it, like, I really am something special. And her dad sat her down. These are her words. Her dad sat her down and said, "Hey, listen, you have a talent, but everybody has a talent. Yours just happens to be running. So don't think that you are any better than anyone else, because you're not." And she said that was some of the best advice that she had ever received. And in 1952, she was asked to participate in the Olympics in Helsinki. And in the 7 months leading up to the Olympics, she trained every day, almost every day, 6 days a week, 6 days a week. And her town where she lived, they built her a little running track that she could practice on. The problem was she worked during the day, and it was winter where she lived, and that meant snow and ice and fog. So she had to practice at night. Another problem was they didn't have any lights at the track. So she'd get off work and she would go with her trainer to the track. And she said it was so miserable. It was so cold, and the track was full of ice and slush and snow. And the fog was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And she would go out and she would run at night, and in order just to see where she was going and keep her on the track, her trainer would take his car and he would pull it down to the end of the track, and he would shine his lights at the end of the track toward the starting line, from the finish line toward the starting line, so that she would be able to see where she was going, in the direction that she was going to run, and so that she wouldn't run off the track and break her leg. And she said the fog was so thick that it was a wonder she didn't break her leg, because she would run right into the car. She said she would run full speed, boom, right into the car. She couldn't see that the car was right there. And these were the conditions: 7 months, no breaks, 6 nights a week in the cold winter months. And so she got to the Olympics in Helsinki, 1952, and she was sick at her stomach because there were 100,000 people there as spectators. She'd never seen 100,000 people before. And so she was having some nerves, and then she walked up into the arena, and the conditions were miserable. They were cold, rainy, wet, slushy conditions. She was right at home. This is how she trained. It was okay with her. And so that day, she tied one world record, and she broke 2 world records and came away with 2 gold medals. What is the point of the story? The gold is not won in fair weather. She didn't win that gold at Helsinki. She won the gold on those cold, wet, snowy, slushy, foggy nights. That's where she won it, right? It was already won when she got to Helsinki. It was already done when she got there. The gold in life does not come on a warm spring stroll when conditions are all great. That's not how you get the gold in life. It doesn't come that way. It comes in the tough times. That's where the gold comes from. And there is gold in this life. And so the title of our message today is Go for the Gold. What I'm going to share with you today is a truth that I've shared many times in many different ways. I'm going to tell you something. The world doesn't know anything about this. This is a secret to the world. Most Christians don't know anything about this. They don't understand this principle. Although every page of the New Testament talks about it. Although Jesus talked about it over and over and over again. Paul talked about it over and over and over and over and over again. It's all through the New Testament. There's so many scriptures there's no way I could share them all. In fact, this morning on the way to church, I was thinking, there's another scripture I could have used. Oh, there's another one. That was a great one I could use, but I didn't have it in my notes. So maybe I'll remember some of those as we go along today. But the point is, it's all through the New Testament. The world doesn't know anything about it, but it is the thing that is so valuable in this world. Jesus said it this way. He said, I have told you these things. What's he talking about here? He's talking about the crucifixion. He's talking about his own crucifixion. And he says, when I'm crucified, every one of you will be scattered. And he said, but I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Is he telling the truth? Does anybody know anything about what I'm talking about? Is he telling the truth? Yes. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. What is Jesus talking about? He's telling them the absolute truth. This is not a metaphor. This is not a mystery. He is just telling them. You know what they said right before he began to speak to them this way? They said, hey, you've been speaking to us in parables, but now you're speaking to us plainly. And this is plain talk. He says, in this world you'll have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. What does that mean, I have overcome the world? He was saying, I have overcome every single thing that will ever come your way. I have overcome everything. I have overcome every temptation. I have overcome every sin. I have overcome every problem. I have overcome all the trouble. And he said to them, he said, the Spirit of truth is with you now. Talking about himself. I think we talked about this last week, maybe. Maybe it was last week or the week before. He says, but he will be in you. He's talking about himself. I am with you now, but I will be in you. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and my Father is in me, and I am in you. Okay? And he's saying, if I have overcome the world, take heart. One translation says, be of good cheer. Cheer up. Be joyful. Don't let this get you down, that in the world you will have trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world. The one who is in you is greater than anything that is in the world. Didn't he say that? Yeah. Greater is he who is in you than he that is in the world. This is what I want you to know. There is gold in this world. There is gold. I promise you, there is gold. How many of you would like a stack of it? I would like a stack of gold. I see the commercials. You should buy gold. And they got these stacks of gold. And I'm like, yeah, I would like some of that. I would like some of that. There is gold. There is gold. And when you see it, I'm going to share this scripture with you out of Ephesians. When you see it, you are going to be amazed. There is gold. What is the gold? Let's get into it. This is Paul. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know. He's like, I pray that your eyes will be open, that your understanding will be open, so that you may know the hope to which God has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. Where is the gold? In his holy people. Jesus said, he said, many will say that the Messiah is here or he is there. He said, but do not go after them. He said, for behold, this is Luke 17, the kingdom of God is within you. He's talking about a kingdom that is within us. And he's talking about it again here. The riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. This is the gold. This is where the gold is. And his incomparably great power for us who believe. The power that we have is not even able to be compared to anything else. His incomparably great power for us who believe. That power, he's telling you about this power, that power is the same power as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms. You want some of that? I want some of that. You know, the problem that we have in the world is we can't see with our eyes and hear with our ears and touch with our hands the spiritual things. But I'm convinced that if we could see and if we could experience what Paul is talking about here, we would really be happy all the time. No matter what problem comes our way, that we would be so happy because of this great power and the great riches of our inheritance that we find in the people of God. So, that power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead. Scripture says, let me think of this now. If the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwells in you, he will make your mortal body come to life. You like that? I like that. I like that. I'm getting an amen from a guy back here in the back who said, you're dead. Isn't that what they said to you? Go home. You're dying. You're not going to live. How many years ago was that? 20 years. 20 years ago. If the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwells in you, he will make your mortal body come to life. Let's continue. Far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, and every name that is invoked, not only in the present age, but also in the one to come. Do you see what he's saying? This rule and authority is above every rule and authority. This power is above every rule and authority. Power and dominion and every name, every power and dominion and every name that is invoked not only in the present age, but also in the one to come. For our culture and our society, he would have probably said it different. Not only in the age to come, but also this present age. That's probably what he would say to us, because we tend to think that all the good stuff is in heaven. All the good stuff is after we die. We are not fully experiencing God's Spirit and His power and His love and His redemption in this life, because we have been told by, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but South Alabama Christianity. That's what I grew up in, South Alabama Christianity. It seems to be that all the good stuff is after you die. I don't like that. I don't like that gospel. I like the gospel that Paul talks about. I like the gospel that Jesus talks about. You know, when Jesus says things like, whoever gives up land or possessions or family or whatever to follow me will reap a reward 100-fold in this life and also the life to come. I like the present day gospel. I like this is the day that the Lord has made. Let's rejoice and be happy in this day. I like the I am gospel, where Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. When when Martha said to Jesus, I know that Lazarus, my brother, will rise in the resurrection at the last day, Jesus said, I am the resurrection. I am the resurrection. And whenever the soldiers came to get Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane that night, he said, whom do you seek? And they said, we seek Jesus. And he said, in your Bible it'll say, I am italicized he, which means he was not in there. He just said, I am. And when he said, I am, the soldiers went, boom, fell back on their backs. Power. There's power in the present tense gospel. And God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be the head over everything for the church, that's us, which is his body. We are his body, in whom he dwells, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. Is he leaving anything out here? Let's sum it up. That was a lot. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? All that? Can anybody repeat that back to me? Okay, let's sum it up, okay? The hope of his glorious, this is the goal, all right? The hope of his glorious riches, the same power that raised Christ from the dead, dwelling in us, the authority above every name, dwelling in his body, the church. Is that awesome or what? A few things that I want you to know about the gold. The gold comes from God. The gold does not come from us. You might be spectacular. You might be so amazing that I can hardly stay in the same room with you, because you are just an amazing person. But this gold is not something that you have. It's something that God has. God, it didn't come from you. It comes from God. 2 Corinthians 4, we're going to get into chapter 4, but we have this treasure in jars of clay, that's our bodies, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. In other words, whenever people see this treasure that you have in your earthly body, your clay vessel, your jar of clay, when people see this, they can only come to one conclusion, that it didn't come from you. It must be from God. That's what they said about the disciples. They saw the disciples, they saw how obedient they were, how faithful they were, and the power that they had, and they said, these guys, man, who are they? Weren't they fishermen? Who are these? These are just common guys. What happened to them? What happened to them? Jesus. All the gold happened. They found the gold in life. They found it. The gold is indestructible. The gold is indestructible. I want you to think for just a minute what the church would be like, what we would be like, how our lives would be different if we acted the way Jesus acted. If we acted the way Peter acted as an apostle. If we acted the way Paul acted as an apostle. If we acted the way John acted as an apostle. If we acted the way these apostles did who received Christ and who were molded and formed into his image, how would our lives be different if we were like them? If we had the gold, how would it be different? It would be a lot different, y'all. It would be a whole lot different than it is right now. And let me just say once again, when I'm talking to you about these things, I'm talking to myself too, okay? When I'm trying to encourage you, I'm encouraging myself. And see, I've been on this all week, so I'm encouraged already, all right? I came in encouraged. It is indestructible. Listen to this. I love it. 2 Corinthians. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. In other words, this is a way of life for us. We are hard pressed on every side. You ever felt like that? You felt like, man, I'm feeling a little claustrophobic here because I feel like everything in life is pressing up against me. All my responsibilities, all of my relationships, all of the things that cause me worry and trouble and pain and stress, they are pressing against me. This was a way of life for the apostles, and this is what Paul's saying. We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are not crushed. This gold is invincible. We are perplexed. Things happen. The enemy is coming after us. The enemy is throwing up roadblocks. The enemy is sowing confusion. We might be perplexed. We may not understand everything in perfect understanding. We might be perplexed, but we are not in despair. We might be perplexed, but not in despair. Are we upset about it? Nope. We might be perplexed, but we're not in despair. We're not depressed. We're not sad. We're not fearful. None of that. We are not in despair. Let me just tell you a little story I was telling my boys the other day. At my worst, lowest point ever in my life, when I didn't know if I could make it another day, when I was depressed and sad and honestly thought that it would be better if I just didn't live anymore because the pain was so bad, okay? I was standing outside talking to some friends. I had been staying with some friends. They were spiritual mentors to me. And I had left their house and put my suitcase in the car, and I was getting ready to get into the car, and I was standing in my car door, and my friend Faye said to me, she said, "Hang in there, honey." She said, "Hang in there." She's my best friend's mom. "Hang in there, honey. It's going to be okay." She said, "Don't despair." She said, "Do not be dismayed. Do not despair. God is with you." And I said, honestly, this is what I said. Well, there's one good thing I see in all this, and that is that it can't get any worse. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, a bird that must have been flying 100 or 200 feet above me relieved himself, and it hit me right on the shoulder. Splat! No sooner did the words come out of my mouth, well, at least it can't get any worse. Splat! And we all just died laughing because it was not a little dropping. You know what I'm saying? It was like a half a cup of splat. How spiritual is that? Is that spiritual enough for you? That's what you get when you come to the net. You get the raw gospel when you come to the net. I'm just kidding. Okay, so anyway, he says, we are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not abandoned. We are struck down, but not destroyed. So life and the enemy and the trouble in this world, it can press us, it can perplex us, it can persecute us, and it can strike us, but it cannot crush us. It cannot cause us despair. It cannot cause us to be abandoned. We are never abandoned by God, and it cannot destroy us. Cannot destroy us. This is the life of a believer. This is the life of a Christian. Get this now. We continue on. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. What is he talking about? That sounds like spiritual talk to me. Does it sound like spiritual talk to you? Okay, it's not. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus. Paul said, I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but it is Christ who lives in me. And so what he's saying is the things that used to bother the old man who used to be alive, the things that used to tempt him, the things that used to trouble him, the things that used to shake him, tempt him, trouble him, and shake him about as much as it does a dead man. No effect. No effect. The enemy comes with temptation. I'm dead. This is Paul. I'm dead. How can I be tempted? I'm dead. I'm dead to sin. And I'm alive to Christ. And so their practice, the apostles' practice was every time they had a chance to sin, they would submit to God. And I'm trying to think of the word that Paul used. But anyway, those things that the world brings, those things would die off of them. The things that would trouble them, when they were troubled, they would submit to God. And we'll talk about this in just a minute. But they would submit to God, and those things would have no power over them. This is the life that they lived. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. Revealed in our body. So in every situation, we are faithful to God. In every situation, we are obedient to God. And when we are, two things happen. The temptation, the thing that comes at us or after us dies, and the life of Jesus in that situation is revealed and other people see it. Does that make sense to you? I'm going to talk a little more about this in just a minute. So, verse 11, for we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake. Do you see what he's saying? He's like, we who are alive in Christ, we are always facing this death thing. We're always facing a situation. Every day requires us to die to ourselves and live to Christ. It's always coming. It's always coming. And he says, for we who are alive, this is spiritual life here, are always being given over to death. That is temptation, trouble, and all kinds of things. And it doesn't specify because there are 1,000 different things. There are relational things. There are things that cause you fear. There are things that cause you trouble. There are stress and all these things. We are always being given over to these things for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. He's saying it again. Be revealed in our mortal body. So when we don't act like we used to, and we don't act like the world, and we don't act like everybody else seems to act, we don't react to these things, then the life of Christ is revealed in our mortal bodies. This is so practical, y'all. So practical. And the gold always comes through submission. It always comes through submission. I know that you probably think that I'm a very humble person. I'm sure it's very evident to everybody how humble I am. But believe it or not, I have struggled with massive amounts of pride my whole life. I don't remember what year it was. I remember what phone I had. I had a flip phone, and it was called a Razr phone. Anybody remember those phones? I thought I was so cool. I was one of the first people to get, I was an early adopter, okay, of the Razr phone. Mine was red, by the way. You remember they were different colors? Mine was red. And I carried it right here in my pocket like I still carry my phone in this pocket. And I went to a meeting, and it was a team meeting. I was on this team of people, and I had some expertise in this project that we were doing. And I thought, certainly everybody will recognize how valuable I am to the team. And so I went into the meeting, and there was this other guy who was arrogant. He was an arrogant little jerk, just like I was, okay? It was the battle of pride that night. And first of all, he disregarded me. And that is the one thing. For somebody to overlook me or disregard me, that hits my pride worse than anything else in the world. And I'm telling you, he disregarded me. He disregarded my expertise. He overlooked me. He disregarded me. He overlooked me. He did not value me. He took over the leadership. And I was so angry. I was so angry that before the meeting was almost over, and I couldn't take it anymore. And I just got up and I just left. And I went out to my truck. This was 4 trucks ago. That'll tell you how long it's been. 4 trucks ago. It was my 4-wheel drive Dodge truck. And so I went out to my truck, and I had my phone in my hand, and I was so mad that I threw my phone, and I meant to just throw it onto the dash. But what I really did is I threw it through the dash. There was a hole in my dash about like that, just the shape of my Razr phone, where the Razr phone went into the dash, never to be seen again. I threw my phone through my dash. Who does that? And so then I have the shame the next day of having to go to the phone store, and they said, if you have your old phone, we can transfer all your information. And I said, I don't have my old phone. I had taken a flashlight to look in the hole to see if I could see it back there somewhere, but I said I don't have my phone. And then they said, well, if you could just give us your SIM card, we could transfer it from that. I said, I don't have the SIM card either. And I said, and I know I've lost all my contacts in my phone. I got to start over. I don't know anybody's number. I mean, this is a lesson to be learned, okay? So I was praying about the situation. I had lots of time that next day as I was trying to get a new phone and going to Lene and trying to get all her contacts manually, put into my phone, where you didn't just hit the one letter in the alphabet. You had to hit it 2 times for the second one and 3 times for the third one. And I had to put all those contacts manually in my phone, to just trying to get some of those contacts in my phone. And I had all this time to think about how silly and how foolish I was for throwing my phone into my dash. And the Lord spoke to me. He said, submit to that guy. Submit to him. I wanted to be off the team. I didn't want to go to another meeting. You know what? I did. I went to the next meeting and I submitted to him as if he was not my boss and he was not my superior, but I submitted to him as if he were. And when I did, it probably did not affect anybody else. It probably, boosted his pride a little bit, but it didn't affect anybody else except for me. Gold. God was pleased with me. God, in the secret place where nobody else knows, where nobody else can hear God, see God, commune with God, only me, in my secret place in my own heart, God was pleased with me, and the gold came. So I have a guy now, currently. Didn't they say always, we're always dealing with this? The scripture? You always do. And so I have a guy currently. I don't have to deal with him every day. Thank God I don't have to deal with him every day. It's only every now and then, every couple months or so, that I have to have a conversation with him or interact with him in some way. And he is an arrogant little snot. You know what I mean? And he's young and he's just an arrogant guy. And everybody knows it. You mention his name. I'm not going to mention his name. But you mention his name around people that know, and they go, oh, God. Oh, gosh. And the other day, I was talking to a friend who had a similar experience with him. And she said, you know what? You ought to go and you ought to tell, next time you talk to him, you ought to tell him blah, 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 blah. And you ought to tell him off. And I said, I can't do that. I said, when I was young, I would have done something like that. I said, but I have to humble myself. I have to submit to God, and I cannot do that. I can't do it anymore. And she said, well, you would actually be helping him by doing that. No, that's the temptation, isn't it? You'd really be helping him. Oh, really? I would be helping? Oh, yeah, I would be helping him. Well, let me just walk right on into my sinful nature and just let the sinful nature have its way. Listen, it always comes through submission. And I know because I have submitted to this little twerp. I have submitted to him. He thinks that I know that he thinks that I am a weak guy, that I can't stand up for myself because he can say anything he wants to me. He can say anything he wants to me, and I will not retaliate. And I know he thinks that Rob, he is a weak man. But do not ever confuse weakness with meekness. You know what meekness is? This is what Jesus had. This is what the apostles had. They were meek people. You know what meek means? It means power under control. That's what it means. Meekness means power under control. You have the power to say it. You have the power to do something. You have the power, and believe me, I have the power to make this guy's life miserable if I wanted to. but it's under control. Don't confuse meekness with weakness. Meekness is not weak. Meekness is the strongest position that you can have. Did anybody have any more trouble than Job? We had a dog one time we found on the side of the road, and this dog had the mange and had a hurt hip and was malnourished and all these things wrong with him. And Lene said she loves to rescue animals, and we didn't have any pets at the time, so we pulled over and we put this mangy dog in the back of our car, and we took him home, and I named him Job. I named him Job because that's what he looked like to me. A guy had been worn out. Job said this: submit to God and be at peace with him. In this way, prosperity will come to you. Yes. Submit to God and be at peace with him. In this way, prosperity will come to you. What kind of prosperity? Any kind you need. If you're having trouble with your finances, prosperity. If you're having trouble with your job, prosperity. If you're having trouble with your relationships, prosperity. If you're having trouble with your children, prosperity. If you're having trouble with stress, prosperity. Submit to God. Be at peace with him. Be at peace with him. Don't struggle against him. We know when we're struggling against him, right? Don't struggle against him. Be at peace with him. Submit to him. And in this way, prosperity will come to your life. That is the goal. The goal is the nature and the power of Christ in us. You want some of that?